The stars belonged to the Ascendants. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, and in all that time, no one had dared to question them. Admiral Sarah Kowalski stood on the bridge of the TCSF Defiance, staring at the view screen. The alien ship hung in space like a cathedral made of light. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The ship was larger than Earth's moon, and it seemed to glow from within, as if it held a captured star in its core. "They're hailing us again, Admiral," said Lieutenant Chen from the communications station. Sarah took a deep breath. "Put them through." The screen changed and a figure appeared. It was hard to look at directly. The being seemed to be made of pure light, constantly shifting and changing. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once. "I am Jathir of the Luminari," the being said. "We are the Ascendants. We have watched your species, humanity, for some time now. You have grown beyond your single world. You have reached out into the void. This is commendable, but now you must make a choice." Sarah kept her face neutral. "What choice?" "Submit to the covenant of lesser races or face correction." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah had read the reports about the covenant. It was a fancy name for slavery. Species who joined gave up their freedom, their technology, and their future. They sent tribute to the Ascendants. They followed population limits. They worshipped beings like Jathir as gods. "And if we refuse?" Sarah asked. Jathir seemed almost sad. "Then we will teach you why we are called gods." Back on Earth, Dr. Marcus Webb watched the transmission in the Terran Assembly Chamber. Around him, the representatives of humanity's unified government argued and shouted. Some wanted to accept. Some wanted to fight. Marcus just watched and thought. He was a quantum physicist, one of the best humanity had ever produced. For the past 3 months, ever since the Ascendants had made contact, he had studied every piece of data they had on these so-called gods, and he was beginning to see patterns. "They're not gods," he muttered to himself. The woman next to him, Ambassador Liu, turned. "What did you say, Doctor?" Marcus looked at her. "The Ascendants. They're not gods. They're just old. Very, very old. And they've had a long time to develop their technology. Technology that looks like magic to us," Liu said quietly. "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic," Marcus quoted. "But it's still technology, which means it has rules, limits, weaknesses." Before Ambassador Liu could respond, the president of the Terran Assembly called for order. The chamber fell silent. President Okonkwo was a tall woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war in her younger days. "We have heard the arguments," she said. "Now we vote. All in favor of accepting the Ascendants' covenant, raise your hand." A few hands went up, maybe 30 out of 300 representatives. All opposed? The rest of the hands rose. The chamber filled with a sound like thunder as people began to cheer and shout. Marcus felt his stomach twist. They had just chosen war against gods. 3 days later, Jathir returned. This time he didn't ask questions. He simply demonstrated what refusal meant. Sarah watched from the Defiance as the Ascendant raised one hand toward the moon. Earth's moon had been converted into a massive defense station over the past century. It bristled with weapons. Thousands of people lived and worked there. It was supposed to be impregnable. Jathir closed his fist. The moon defense station simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, and the next there was nothing but expanding debris. No explosion, no warning, just gone. 3,000 lives snuffed out like candle flames. The bridge of the Defiance was silent. "Dear God," someone whispered. "No," Sarah said quietly. "Not God, just powerful. There's a difference." Jathir's voice filled the bridge again. "You have 1 solar cycle to reconsider. We do not wish to destroy you. We wish to guide you, as we have guided all the younger races. Submit, and you will be protected. Refuse, and you will be removed. The choice is yours." The transmission ended. Sarah looked around at her crew. They were afraid. She was afraid. But fear could be useful. "Lieutenant Chen, get me a channel to Earth. I need to speak with Dr. Webb." Marcus was in his laboratory when the call came through. He had been working non-stop since the vote, analyzing the footage of what Jathir had done to the moon station. Sarah's face appeared on his screen. She looked exhausted. "Doctor, tell me you found something, anything." Marcus pulled up his data. The way they destroyed the station, it wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. "I think they manipulate quantum fields directly. They can alter matter at the molecular level, maybe even smaller. In English, Doctor, they can change reality, but Marcus leaned forward, excitement creeping into his voice despite the situation. But I don't think they can do it indefinitely. When Jothir closed his fist, there was a lag. Just a fraction of a second, but it was there. He had to concentrate. To focus, so they're not all-powerful. Nothing is all-powerful, Admiral. The universe has rules. Even gods have to follow them. Sarah smiled for the first time in days. Then we find those rules. And we break them. The next month was the longest in human history. The entire species prepared for war. Factories that made consumer goods were converted to produce weapons. Every ship in humanity's merchant fleet was retrofitted with weapons. It wouldn't be enough. Everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. But humans had never been good at giving up. Marcus worked around the clock building devices that might be able to disrupt whatever the Ascendants used to perform their miracles. He had no way to test them. He just had theories and prayers. Sarah drilled her fleet endlessly. 200 ships, that's all humanity had. 200 ships against an empire that controlled thousands of worlds, against beings who could erase moons with a thought. On the last day of the solar cycle, President Okonkwo gave a speech that was broadcast to every human in the solar system. They call themselves gods, she said. They demand we kneel. They expect us to worship them and give up our freedom. Our ancestors faced tyrants before, kings who claimed divine right, emperors who demanded absolute obedience. And every time humanity said no, we have always chosen freedom over safety, dignity over submission. Today is no different. We do not know if we can win, but we know who we are. We are human, and humans do not kneel. When Jothir returned for humanity's answer, Sarah delivered it herself. We refuse, she said simply. The being of light seemed to shimmer with something that might have been disappointment. So be it. We will return in 3 months with a correction fleet. Use this time to reconsider. Pray to whatever gods you believe in. Perhaps they will show more mercy than you have shown wisdom. The transmission ended. Sarah looked at her crew. They looked back at her with determination in their eyes. All hands, she announced over the ship-wide channel. Battle stations. We have 3 months to prepare. Let's make them count. Marcus watched from Earth as the Ascendant ship vanished in a burst of light, folding space around itself and disappearing. He returned to his lab. 3 months. He had 3 months to figure out how to kill a god. In his mind, he kept replaying President Okonkwo's words. Humans do not kneel. Marcus had never been a particularly patriotic man. He loved science, not flags. But in that moment he understood. Some things were worth dying for. He just hoped they wouldn't have to. 3 months passed like a held breath. When the Ascendant fleet arrived, Sarah had expected the sky to go dark with ships. Instead, 12 vessels appeared at the edge of the solar system. Just 12. Each one was the size of a small moon, is that all? Lieutenant Chen asked, trying to sound brave. Sarah understood. The Ascendants weren't bringing an armada. They were bringing a cleanup crew. This wasn't a war to them. It was pest control. All ships, Sarah announced on the fleet-wide channel. Engage at will. Make every shot count. The Battle of Terra began with humanity throwing everything it had at the 12 ships. Missiles streaked through space. Railguns fired metal slugs at incredible speeds. Laser batteries painted targeting solutions across the void. 200 human ships attacked with desperate fury. The Ascendants didn't even bother raising shields. Sarah watched in horror as their weapons simply passed through the enemy ships. No, not through. They were being absorbed as if the ships were eating the attacks. Other weapons hit but did nothing. The Ascendant vessels seemed to exist and not exist at the same time, flickering in and out of normal space. Admiral, one of their ships is moving, Chen reported. The largest vessel began drifting toward the human fleet. It was made of what looked like stone, covered in carvings that glowed with inner light. A voice boomed across all frequencies. I am Thundrak of the Karis. You have fought bravely but foolishly. We are inevitable. We are eternal. Surrender now and some of you will be allowed to live as servants. Sarah gritted her teeth. All ships focus fire on that vessel. Everything we have, the human fleet obeyed. For 30 seconds, every weapon humanity possessed hammered at the stone ship. When the bombardment ended, the ship was completely undamaged, not even a scratch. Then it fired back. A single beam of golden light swept across the human fleet. 15 ships simply vanished, erased from existence like the moon station had been. Sarah felt tears on her face but kept her voice steady. All ships, evasive maneuvers, pattern delta. The fleet scattered, but it was like insects fleeing from a boot. 3 more ships disappeared. Then 5 more. The Ascendants were toying with them, Sarah realized. They could end this in seconds if they wanted to. Admiral, incoming transmission from the Karis ship, Chen said. On screen, a figure appeared that made Sarah's breath catch. It was huge, maybe 3 times the height of a human, and appeared to be carved from living stone. Cracks in its surface glowed like lava. When it moved, the sound was like mountains grinding together. I, Thundrak, will now board your vessel and accept your surrender personally, the being said. It will be an honor for you. The transmission cut off. Moments later, alarms blared throughout the Defiance. Something just appeared in Cargo Bay 3, Chen shouted. Sarah grabbed her sidearm. All Marines to Cargo Bay 3, lethal force authorized. She switched channels. This is the Admiral. I'm going to meet our guest personally. By the time Sarah reached the cargo bay, the Marines were already there. 30 of Earth's finest soldiers, armed with plasma rifles and wearing combat armor. They had formed a semicircle around the figure in the center of the bay. Thundrak stood like a statue, unbothered by the weapons pointed at him. Up close, he was even more intimidating. His eyes glowed like coals in a forge. I'm impressed, Thundrak said. You are the first lesser race in 4,000 years to refuse the Covenant. Your defiance is quaint. We don't take orders from anyone, Sarah said, raising her weapon. God or not, Thundrak laughed, a sound like an avalanche. God? Child, I am so far beyond gods that... He never finished the sentence. Sergeant Rodriguez moved. She was one of the best close combat fighters humanity had, and she moved faster than Sarah had ever seen. In her hand was a monomolecular blade, sharp enough to cut through steel like paper. The blade plunged into the crack between Thundrak's stone plates. The Ascendant's eyes went wide. He looked down at the blade in his side, and then at the golden liquid leaking from the wound. His blood, Sarah realized. Gods could bleed. Impossible, Thundrak whispered. Then his voice became a roar.
Impossible!
He swung his massive arm and Rodriguez went flying, but other Marines were already moving. Plasma bolts struck him from 3 directions. More soldiers closed in with monomolecular weapons. Thundrak fought back with the strength of a being who had never known defeat. But the humans were relentless. In the chaos, Sarah noticed something. Thundrak wasn't using his reality-bending powers. He was fighting with just his physical strength. Why? The answer came to her in a flash. There were too many minds here, too many humans in too small a space. Their consciousness was creating interference, static that disrupted whatever quantum field the Ascendants used. Close quarters, Sarah shouted. Everyone get close to him. The Marines understood immediately. They swarmed the giant, staying so close that he couldn't use his cosmic powers without risking hurting himself. It became a brawl, primal and brutal. And slowly, impossibly, the humans were winning. Thundrak roared in rage and fear, actual fear, an emotion he hadn't felt in 8 millennia. He tried to teleport away, but the human consciousness around him made it impossible. He was trapped in a metal box with creatures he had dismissed as insignificant. Extraction team now, Sarah ordered into her comm. The cargo bay doors blew open, not toward space, but toward the ship's interior. The Marines grabbed Thundrak with magnetic restraints as the Defiance's engines fired, pulling away from the Ascendant fleet. All ships, full retreat, Sarah commanded. Emergency jump, all vectors. The human fleet scattered in every direction, jumping to hyperspace. Behind them, the remaining Ascendant ships hung in space, motionless. For the first time in 10,000 years, they were unsure of what to do. Aboard the Defiance, Thundrak was dragged to a specially prepared holding cell. The walls were lined with the jamming devices Dr. Webb had created. The Ascendant's powers wouldn't work here. Sarah stood outside the cell looking at the trapped god. Thundrak stared back at her with something new in his ancient eyes. Respect and terror. You actually hurt me, he said quietly. How? We're human, Sarah said. We don't know how to give up. Back on Earth, Dr. Marcus Webb received the data from the battle. His hands shook as he reviewed it. They had done it. They had wounded an Ascendant and captured him. And more importantly, they had discovered the limitation of their powers. He immediately sent a message to every human colony and ship. Stay close together. Human consciousness disrupts their abilities. In groups, we have a chance. The message spread across human space within hours. And with it, hope began to spread too. But in the depths of space, in a realm beyond normal physics, something ancient stirred. The voice eternal, the supreme consciousness that ruled the Ascendants, became aware of what had happened. For the first time in 5,000 years, it spoke directly to its servants. The humans have broken an Ascendant. They have proven they are a threat to the cosmic order. This cannot stand. Prepare the Grand Fleet. I want 10,000 ships. I want humanity erased from existence, not enslaved, not converted, destroyed, every man, woman, and child. Every record of their existence burned from the galaxy. They will serve as an example for all eternity of what happens when lesser races forget their place. The order went out across the Ascendant Empire. 10,000 ships began to move toward a single, insignificant yellow star in an unremarkable arm of the galaxy. Sarah didn't know about the Grand Fleet yet. For now, she stood in the observation deck of the Defiance, looking at Earth hanging in space like a blue jewel. They had won a battle, but the war had just begun. Lieutenant Chen approached quietly. "Admiral, we're receiving messages from across human space. People are calling you the God Slayer. They're saying we proved the Ascendants can be beaten." Sarah smiled grimly. "We didn't beat them. We just made them bleed. But sometimes that's enough to change everything." In his cell, Thundrak sat in silence, processing 8,000 years of certainty crumbling around him. He had always known he was superior to the lesser races. It was a fundamental truth of the universe. But now, with golden blood dried on his stone skin, he wondered if the universe had more truths than he had ever considered. And in the back of his ancient mind, a small heretical thought began to grow. What if we were wrong? 6 months. That's how long the siege of Earth lasted. The Ascendants didn't destroy the planet immediately. They wanted humanity to break, to beg, to accept the covenant on their knees. It was about making an example, not just punishment. They didn't understand that humans became more stubborn the harder you pushed them. Dr. Marcus Webb barely slept during those 6 months. His laboratory had become his entire world. Every day he spent hours with Thundrak, asking questions, taking measurements, analyzing the quantum signatures that surrounded the Ascendant, even in his powered-down state. At first, Thundrak refused to speak. He sat in his cell like a statue, silent and defiant. But as weeks turned into months, something changed. The isolation wore on him. For 8,000 years, he had been surrounded by worshippers and fellow Ascendants. Now he was alone with the creatures who had wounded him. "Why do you fight?" Thundrak asked one day, breaking weeks of silence. "You cannot win. Even if you kill me, there are thousands like me. Millions of lesser race soldiers who worship us. You are one species against an entire galaxy." Marcus looked up from his instruments. "We fight because we're human. It's what we do." "That is not an answer." "Sure it is." Marcus pulled up a chair and sat down facing the cell. "Let me tell you about humanity. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. Ice ages, predators, diseases, droughts. We should have died out 1,000 times. But we didn't, you know why?" Thundrak said nothing, but Marcus could tell he was listening. "Because we're too stupid to know when we're beaten. Every time the universe knocked us down, we got back up. We looked at the thing that hurt us and said, 'I'm going to figure out how you work, and then I'm going to beat you.' We've been doing it for 200,000 years. We're not going to stop now just because you're bigger and older than us." Something flickered in Thundrak's glowing eyes. Not agreement, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. "You will all die," he said quietly. "Maybe," Marcus admitted, "but we'll take as many of you with us as we can." The breakthrough came 3 weeks later. Marcus had been studying the quantum disruption that human consciousness created. It was subtle, barely measurable, but it was there. Humans emitted a specific pattern of quantum noise that interfered with the field manipulation the Ascendants used. But what if they could amplify it, focus it, weaponize it? Marcus worked for 72 hours straight, surviving on coffee and determination. When he finally had a working prototype, he called Admiral Kowalski. "I think I've got something," he said, holding up a device the size of a briefcase. "It's a quantum disruptor. It amplifies the interference that human minds naturally produce. If this works, it should completely nullify Ascendant powers within a 50-meter radius." Sarah looked at the device with hope burning in her tired eyes. "How do we test it?" Marcus swallowed hard. "I need to test it on Thundrak." They brought the device to Thundrak's cell. The Ascendant watched with interest as Marcus set it up. "What is that?" Thundrak asked. "An experiment," Marcus said. "If I'm right, this will completely shut down your abilities. And if you're wrong, then it does nothing and I'm back to the drawing board. Marcus activated the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Thundrak gasped. It was a deeply disturbing sound coming from a being made of stone. What? What have you done? Thundrak whispered. I cannot feel the quantum field. I am alone. Marcus checked his readings. It works. Dear God, it actually works. Sarah immediately understood the implications. How many of these can you make? Give me 2 weeks and every fabricator on Earth? Maybe 1,000? Do it. And Marcus. Sarah smiled grimly. Make them portable. I want every strike team carrying one. The first field test came 2 weeks later. An Ascendant scout ship had gotten too close to Mars, where human resistance fighters had been hiding in the underground colonies. Sarah led the strike team personally, carrying one of Marcus's disruptors. The Ascendant on the ship was named Velkoth, one of the Veil, reality benders who could phase through solid matter and see through time itself. The Veil were considered the most dangerous of the Ascendant species, nearly impossible to kill. Sarah's team infiltrated the ship using stolen Ascendant technology. They moved through the corridors in silence, the disruptor active and creating a bubble of normalcy around them. When they found Velkoth, the Ascendant was meditating in what looked like empty space, floating without support. As the team entered with the disruptor, Velkoth fell. The look of shock on the alien's face would have been funny in any other circumstance. What? Velkoth started to say. Sarah shot him, 3 times in the center of mass with a plasma pistol. The reality bender who could see through time hadn't seen it coming because, within the disruptor's field, he was just flesh and blood. The Ascendant looked down at the smoking holes in his chest, then at Sarah with something like wonder in his dying eyes. How? He whispered. We're human, Sarah said. We learned fast. Velkoth died. Not in battle with another cosmic being, not in some grand extinction event, but on the floor of his own ship, killed by creatures he had considered beneath notice. Sarah's team broadcast the entire thing across every frequency they could access. They wanted the Ascendants to see. They wanted the enslaved species of the galaxy to see. Gods could die. They could bleed. They could fall. The response was immediate and catastrophic. On 70 different worlds, slave species rose up against their Ascendant masters. They didn't have disruptors yet. Marcus was working on that, trying to spread the technology, but they had numbers and fury. The Karis found their temples burning. The Luminari discovered that worship could turn to hate in an instant. The galaxy began to burn. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the chaos unfold on the tactical display. Rebellion markers flickered across 12 sectors. The Ascendant Empire, which had stood for 10 millennia, was fracturing. Admiral, Lieutenant Chen said quietly, we're receiving a transmission. From the Ascendants. It's marked as highest priority. On screen. This time, it wasn't Jathir or any individual Ascendant. The screen filled with something vast and incomprehensible, a presence that hurt to look at directly. When it spoke, the words bypassed Sarah's ears and resonated directly in her mind. I am the voice eternal. I am the first and last consciousness. You have committed deicide. You have shattered the cosmic order for this crime. There is only one sentence: extinction. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah's bridge crew holding their heads in pain. Some were crying. Others were bleeding from their noses. The voice eternal had spoken, and the weight of that ancient intelligence was almost too much for human minds to bear. Admiral, long-range sensors are picking up movement, Chen said, his voice shaking. Jump signatures. Hundreds of them. No thousands. Sarah felt her blood go cold. How many? At least 500 Ascendant capital ships, ma'am. All heading for Sol. Estimated arrival time, 90 days. 500 ships. Each one capable of destroying planets. Humanity had 200 vessels, and most of those were damaged from the ongoing siege. The math was simple and brutal. Sarah looked around at her crew. They were waiting for her to say something, anything that would make this better. She wished she had words of comfort. She didn't. All hands, she announced on the ship-wide channel. This is Admiral Kowalski. You've all heard the sensors. In 90 days, the Ascendants are coming to end humanity. We have 3 options. We can surrender, we can run, or we can fight. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to fight. Not here, though. If they want to bring 500 ships to Sol, they're going to find us already gone. Because we're going to take the fight to them first. Lieutenant Chen turned to stare at her. Admiral? Sarah smiled, and it was not a kind expression. We have 90 days and nothing left to lose. We're going to attack their home worlds. We're going to hit them where they feel safe, and we're going to make them hurt. She pulled up the tactical display and pointed to a system deep in Ascendant territory. Keras Prime, their holiest world. We're going to broadcast the truth about the Ascendants from there. We're going to show every enslaved species in the galaxy that their gods are mortal. If we're going to die, we're going to make sure the Ascendants fall with us. In his cell, Thundrak listened to Sarah's speech. A strange feeling built in his chest, something he hadn't experienced in millennia. Was it pride, respect, or was it simply the recognition that he was witnessing something important? A moment when the universe changed direction. He pressed the call button for the guards. I wish to speak with Admiral Kowalski, he said. Tell her I know the way to Keras Prime, and I will guide you there. The guards stared at him in shock. You'd betray your own people? Thundrak was quiet for a long moment. I have had 6 months to think about what my people have become. To think about what I have become. Perhaps it is time for the Ascendants to remember that power without wisdom is tyranny. Perhaps these humans, these impossible, stubborn humans, are what the galaxy needs. The message was relayed to Sarah. She didn't trust Thundrak, not completely, but they needed every advantage they could get. And if an Ascendant was willing to turn against his own kind, she would use that. The Prometheus fleet, as it came to be called, launched 3 days later. 20 ships, each equipped with the most advanced disruptors Marcus could build. The journey to Keras Prime took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of humanity's 20 ships traveling through Ascendant territory, hunted by patrols and praying their stolen cloaking technology would hold. They lost 3 ships to enemy scouts. 17 vessels remained when they finally arrived at the heart of the Keras civilization. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Defiance, staring at the planet that filled the view screen. Keras Prime was massive, 3 times the size of Earth, with continents made of crystallized metal and oceans of liquid mercury. Cities rose from the surface like mountains, each one a temple dedicated to Ascendant glory. Orbital stations surrounded the planet like a crown of jewels. It's beautiful, Lieutenant Chen whispered. It's a monument to 10,000 years of tyranny, Sarah replied. Let's tear it down. In the brig, Thundrak sat quietly in his cell, his stone hands clasped in what might have been prayer. Dr. Marcus Webb stood outside holding a portable disruptor. Last chance to back out, Marcus said. Once we start this, there's no going back for you. Your own people will hunt you forever. Thundrak's glowing eyes met Marcus's. I have lived for 8,000 years. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have watched species grow and die under our rule. And in all that time, I never once questioned if we were right. These past months with your people have taught me something the Ascendants forgot long ago. To question is not weakness. It is wisdom. Why help us? Marcus asked. You know we're probably going to die here. Because perhaps some things are worth dying for. You humans have reminded me of that. Thundrak paused. And because I have begun to believe that we Ascendants have become the very thing we once fought against. We have become tyrants. Marcus nodded slowly and deactivated the cell's force field. Then let's go make history together. The attack began at dawn on Keras Prime. Not a military assault. That would have been suicide. Instead, Sarah launched every communications drone and hacking program humanity possessed. Within minutes, they had hijacked the planetary broadcast network. Marcus appeared on every screen, every holographic display, every neural interface on Keras Prime and the surrounding systems. Behind him stood Thundrak, a living symbol of Ascendant might, now choosing to stand with humanity. People of the galaxy, Marcus began. You know me as Dr. Marcus Webb of Earth. You know us as the humans, the species that refuse to kneel. Today, I'm going to tell you the truth about the beings you call gods. He pulled up data streams, scientific readings, and analysis of Ascendant technology. The Ascendants are not divine. They are not supernatural. They are simply old, ancient beings who developed advanced technology over millions of years. Every miracle they perform, every reality-bending feat, is based on quantum field manipulation. It follows rules, it has limits, and most importantly, it can be disrupted. Marcus held up a disruptor device. This is quantum interference technology. It nullifies ascendant powers completely, and I'm about to broadcast the complete schematics for building these devices to every system in the galaxy. Anyone with basic manufacturing capabilities can make them. The gods' greatest weapon is the belief that they cannot be fought. Today, we remove that belief. The schematics began transmitting across every frequency humanity could access. On 1,000 worlds, enslaved species downloaded the data. In hidden workshops and resistance cells, beings who had never dared to dream of freedom suddenly had a weapon. Thundrak stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 8 millennia. I am Thundrak of the Keras. For thousands of years I enforced the covenant of lesser races. I told myself it was for the good of the galaxy that we were keeping order. But I was wrong. We Ascendants did not save the galaxy from chaos. We became the chaos we feared. We forgot that we were once like you, struggling, learning, growing. We forgot that we were mortal. He held up his arm, showing the scar where Sergeant Rodriguez's blade had cut him. I bleed. I can be wounded. I can die. Every Ascendant can. We are not gods. We are simply old, and we have been cruel. The broadcast was reaching billions of beings now. On worlds across the galaxy, slaves looked up at their masters with new understanding. The Ascendants could be hurt. The Ascendants could be killed. The Ascendants could be stopped. Aboard the orbital command station above Keras Prime, the Keras leadership erupted into chaos. A dozen Ascendants shouted at once, demanding the broadcast be stopped, demanding human ships be destroyed, demanding order be restored. One voice cut through the noise like a blade. Silence. The chamber fell quiet. An Ascendant walked in who was old even by their standards. His stone body was covered in cracks that glowed with blue fire instead of the usual red. This was Krytok, the eldest of the Keras, one of the original founders of the Ascendant Covenant. The humans have committed the greatest heresy in galactic history, Krytok said quietly. They have revealed our vulnerability to every species we rule. The consequences of this will echo for millennia. The rebellions will spread, the empire will burn, and it is entirely our fault. The other Keras stared at him in shock. We had a choice, 10,000 years ago, Krytok continued. When we achieved transcendence, when we became more than mortal, we chose to rule rather than guide. We chose fear over respect. We chose worship over partnership. The humans have simply shown the galaxy what we refuse to see. That might does not make right. You cannot mean to surrender to these primitives, another Keras shouted. I mean to end a system that has lasted far too long. But that decision is not mine alone. Krytok turned to the communications officer. Send a message to the Voice Eternal. Tell it that Keras Prime requests an emergency conclave. It is time for the Ascendants to decide what we truly are. While this political chaos unfolded, the human fleet faced a more immediate problem. The Keras home fleet had finally responded to the intrusion. 50 Ascendant warships moved to intercept the 17 human vessels. All ships activate disruptors and engage, Sarah commanded. Make every shot count. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships, tiny, compared to the Ascendant vessels, danced between the giants like wolves attacking bears. The disruptors created bubbles of normal physics where Ascendant powers failed. Inside those bubbles, advanced technology was just technology, and humans had spent centuries getting very good at breaking things. The TCSF Endeavor rammed an Ascendant ship at full speed, its disruptor preventing the enemy from phasing away. Both ships exploded in a bloom of fire. The TCSF Resilience focused all power to its railguns and punched through an Ascendant vessel's hull, venting atmosphere and Keras crew into space. The TCSF Defiance, Sarah's flagship, coordinated the chaos with brutal efficiency. But the humans were outnumbered. For every Ascendant ship they destroyed, they lost 2 of their own. 12 human ships remained. Then 10. Then 8. Sarah's bridge rocked from a near miss. Chen, damage report. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 9. We've lost main power. Backup generators at 60%. Admiral, we can't take much more of this. Sarah looked at the tactical display. 8 human ships against 30 Ascendant vessels. They had accomplished their mission. The broadcast was complete. The galaxy had heard the truth. But they weren't going to escape. All ships, she said calmly. It has been an honor serving with you. Remember, we are human. We do not surrender. We do not break. And we sure as hell do not— Admiral, Chen interrupted. New contacts jumping in. 40, 60. 100 ships. They're not Ascendant signatures. The tactical display lit up with new markers. Ships from a dozen different species were appearing around Karis Prime. Species that had been enslaved for millennia. They weren't advanced. Their vessels were crude compared to Ascendant technology. But there were hundreds of them, and they were all targeting the Ascendant fleet. A transmission came through in broken English. Humans of Earth, you showed us the way. Now we fight with you. Together we free the galaxy. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she watched liberation fleets from across known space join the battle. They were losing ships by the dozens, but they kept coming. For every one that died, 2 more jumped in. The Ascendant fleet, confused and overwhelmed by the sudden assault of species they had dismissed as harmless, began to break formation. Then something vast appeared in the sky above Karis Prime. It wasn't a ship. It was barely even visible, existing in more dimensions than human eyes could perceive. When it spoke, every being in the system heard it in their mind. Enough. The voice eternal had arrived. Every ship in the system froze as if time itself had stopped. Sarah felt her body lock in place, unable to move. She could see her crew similarly paralyzed, frozen in mid-action. This chaos ends now, the voice eternal declared. Humanity, you have shattered the order that sustained the galaxy for 10,000 years. You have committed deicide and sparked rebellion across 1,000 worlds. For this, there can be only one judgment. Sarah couldn't move, couldn't speak, but she could still think. She had known this moment would come. She had known they would die. But they had done what they set out to do. The truth was out there. Even if the voice eternal killed every human alive, the galaxy would never be the same. The voice eternal seemed to read her thoughts. You believe you have won because you have spread your truth. The Nexus existed outside of normal space and time. It was a construct built by the Ascendants at the height of their power, a place where reality could be shaped by collective will. No being had set foot in it for 5,000 years, not since the last conclave when the voice eternal had been given supreme authority. Now beings from across the galaxy materialized in the vast chamber. Ascendants appeared first, luminary beings of light, Karis made of living stone, Vale who existed partially in other dimensions, and 4 other species that had achieved transcendence. They numbered in the hundreds the most powerful entities in known space. Then came the others. Representatives from the lesser races, as the Ascendants had called them for so long, species who had been enslaved, controlled and kept in ignorance. They stood together on one side of the chamber, facing their former masters, and in the center, between both groups stood 3 humans, Admiral Sarah Kowalski, Dr. Marcus Webb, and surprisingly Thundrak of the Karis, the first Ascendant to openly side with humanity. The voice eternal manifested above them all, a presence so vast it seemed to fill the entire Nexus. When it spoke, the words resonated in every mind present. This conclave was called to address the human question. They have disrupted the cosmic order. They have killed Ascendants. They have armed our vassals with the knowledge to resist us. There is only one appropriate response: complete extinction of the human species and memory wiping of all lesser races who have been contaminated by their ideology. Sarah stepped forward. She was exhausted, covered in bruises and burns from the battle at Karis Prime. But her voice was steady. You can try to erase us. You can try to erase the truth, but it's too late. The galaxy knows now. You're not gods. You're just old, and being old doesn't give you the right to control everyone else. A Luminari elder drifted forward, its light pulsing with anger. You speak of rights? You who have existed for barely a moment in cosmic time? We brought order to chaos. We ended the wars of ascension that nearly destroyed the galaxy. We have maintained peace for 10 millennia. You've maintained control, Dr. Marcus Webb interjected. There's a difference. Peace built on fear and submission isn't peace. It's just slow-burning tyranny. The Voice Eternal's presence pressed down on the humans like a physical weight. You understand nothing of what we sacrificed to build this order. We were like you once, chaotic, violent, destructive. We transcended those impulses. We became more. You became less, Thundrak said, his stone voice echoing through the chamber. Every ascendant present turned to stare at him. We became less than what we were. We forgot what it meant to struggle, to question, to grow. We have spent 10,000 years stagnating, convinced of our own perfection. Traitor, a Karis elder spat. You stand with primitives against your own kind. I stand for truth, Thundrak replied. Something we have not done in millennia. The Voice Eternal wants to erase humanity because they have reminded us of an uncomfortable fact. We are not infallible. We are not divine. We are simply beings with power, and power without humility is tyranny. The chamber erupted into chaos. Ascendants shouted at each other, ancient alliances fractured. The Luminari demanded immediate action against humanity. The Karis were split, with some supporting Thundrak and others calling for his execution. The Veil suggested retreat to higher dimensions and abandoning the physical galaxy entirely. The Voice Eternal tried to restore order, but for the first time in 5,000 years, its authority was being questioned. Jathir floated to the center of the chamber. Voice Eternal, I have a question. When you were given supreme authority, what was your mandate? To maintain cosmic order. And have you maintained order? Or have you merely maintained our dominance? The Voice Eternal paused. That moment of hesitation was everything. Sarah saw it, the crack in the foundation of absolute authority. The galaxy is burning, Sarah said, addressing all the ascendants present. 40 systems are in open rebellion. Vassal species are building disruptors and learning to fight back. You can kill us, kill every human who ever lived. But you can't kill an idea. And the idea is simple. No one deserves to be ruled by beings who claim to be gods. A Veil elder shimmered into partial visibility. Then what do you propose, human? Anarchy? Chaos? Without our guidance, the lesser races will destroy themselves. Maybe, Marcus said. Or maybe they'll surprise you. Maybe they'll build something better than what you created. But they deserve the chance to try. And they deserve to make their own mistakes instead of living under yours. An ancient Luminari, one who had been present at the first conclave 10,000 years ago, spoke for the first time. Her light was dim with age. I remember why we created the Covenant. We had just emerged from the wars of ascension. Species with godlike powers fought for dominance. Entire star systems were destroyed. Billions died. We created the Covenant to prevent that from happening again. But in preventing war, you prevented growth, Sarah said. You locked everyone in place, including yourselves. The ancient Luminari was silent for a long moment. Perhaps we let fear guide us when wisdom should have. Perhaps 10,000 years is long enough. Betrayer, a younger Luminari shouted. You would dissolve everything we built? I would question it, the elder replied. As these humans have taught us to do. The Voice Eternal's presence swelled, and for a moment Sarah thought it would simply destroy them all. But then something unexpected happened. The vast consciousness seemed to fracture. Parts of it split off, arguing with itself. The supreme intelligence that had ruled the Ascendants was having its first internal conflict in 5 millennia. When the Voice Eternal spoke again, its voice was different, smaller, more uncertain. We were like you once. I was like you. I remember now. Before I became the Voice Eternal, I was an individual. I had doubts. I made mistakes. I grew from them. And then, I transcended. I merged with others to become something greater. But in becoming greater, I became rigid, certain, unable to change. The presence contracted, becoming more focused. For the first time, beings in the Nexus could see the Voice Eternal not as an overwhelming force, but as a collection of individuals who had lost themselves in pursuit of cosmic order. You are chaos incarnate, humanity, the Voice Eternal said. You question everything. You refuse to accept limits. You are dangerous and unpredictable, and perhaps that is exactly what the galaxy needs. Not to replace order with chaos, but to balance order with the possibility of change. A Luminari fundamentalist surged forward, blazing with light. This is heresy. The Covenant must be maintained. Lesser races must be controlled. If we allow them freedom, they will destroy us. Then maybe we deserve to be destroyed, Jathir said quietly. The fundamentalist screamed in rage and attacked. Not the humans, but Jathir himself. Other Luminari joined him, along with Karis and Vale, who refused to accept the possibility of change. The chamber erupted into violence as ascendants fought each other for the first time in 10,000 years. Sarah grabbed Marcus and pulled him behind a pillar of crystallized thought. This is going to get ugly. It already is, Marcus replied as reality itself bent and twisted around them. Thundrax stood in the center of the chaos, defending the humans with his stone body. Other ascendants joined him, those who had begun to question, who had started to remember what they once were. The battle raged with powers that could reshape reality, but limited by the Nexus itself, which dampened their abilities to prevent its own destruction. The turning point came when Kratok, the ancient Karis elder, stepped into the fight. He was old beyond measure, one of the first beings to achieve transcendence. When he moved, space itself seemed to groan. He didn't attack the fundamentalists. He simply stood between them and the humans. Enough, he said, his voice carrying the weight of 8 million years. I am the eldest here. I remember the wars that led to the Covenant. I remember the fear that drove us to control others. And I remember something else. I remember being mortal. I remember being uncertain. I remember growing. We gave that up for safety. Perhaps it is time we reclaimed it. The fundamentalist leader, blazing with desperate rage, hurled himself at Kratok. The ancient being simply stood there and took the attack. The younger ascendant's power washed over him like water, doing nothing. You cannot hurt me, Kratok said. I am too old, too powerful. But that is precisely the problem. I am so powerful that I have forgotten what it means to be vulnerable. These humans have reminded me, and for that lesson I am grateful. He turned to the fundamentalist leader. You fear change because you have never experienced it. You have lived in certainty for so long that uncertainty terrifies you. But growth only comes through uncertainty. Wisdom only comes through questioning. We have had 10,000 years of certainty. Perhaps it is time for something new. The fundamentalist looked around wildly. Other ascendants were standing down, reconsidering, questioning. His support was evaporating. In desperation, he turned to the humans, his light blazing with lethal intent. If we fall, you fall with us. He screamed and unleashed everything he had at Sarah and Marcus. The attack never reached them. The voice eternal itself manifested directly in front of the humans, taking the full force of the blast.